Alrighty, it's 12 o'clock and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ana Gonzalez and I am the head of customer success here at Enflux. I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar today. And our webinar today is going to be a case study with Florida A&M, and our guest speaker for today is Jason Mobley. He is the Executive Director of Information Technology. Okay, so if you, excuse me, a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and so I will provide you a link after the session is over. As an attendee, you can mute and unmute your audio, virtually raise your hand or send messages through our chat. We encourage you, as Mr. Mobley is doing his presentation, to use the chat feature to ask questions. We will try to get to, we're going to get to your questions at the end of the session. That way he can go through all of the presentation, and then we can address some of your questions that you will address in the chat area. And then hopefully if we have time, we'll also have kind of more an open discussion. We'll shut this down. Hopefully, we can go back into a gallery view and we can all talk to each other. I think it would be great. Okay, so our agenda, I'm going to introduce Mr. Mobley to you. And, Mr. Mobley is going to go over why Florida A&M chose Enflux, their implementation strategy. He's going to do a little bit of show and tell of their categories per item campaign that they did at their school, and some of the ways that Enflux was able to help find solutions to some of his issues as he was going through that campaign. One is adding filters to address creator visibility, and also he's going to cover how he's starting to use action plans. Then finally, we'll just go through some next steps for assessment dashboard and curriculum dashboard, and end with some question and answer session. So let me introduce you to Jason Mobley. Jason Mobley is the Executive Director of Information Technology at Florida A&M University. He's a unified communications expert, strategic thinker, and solutions provider. He has an MS in information technology from Florida State University and is working on his EDD in instructional technology. So take it away, Mr. Mobley.
All right, well, welcome to the webinar today. I appreciate you guys taking the time to join this, especially in an unprecedented time like this. So that I can get acclimated with my audience. In the chat, let me know if you are a current Enflux customer or a potential customer, just so I can kind of see who I'm speaking with. All right, so we have Lee as a potential. What about the rest of you guys? Just click on your chat and type it in. All right, we have a couple current, and okay, so it looks like the audience is oops, I got muted. Okay, so again, why did Florida A&M choose Enflux? Well, initially, we've been an ExamSoft customer since late 2015. And I was kind of the primary person launching that. And what we found is a lot of faculty members typically have a very full AOR. Right? They're always very, very busy. They have a lot of things to do, and they don't always have the time to go through and run the ExamSoft reports. And quite frankly, the ExamSoft reports don't have everything in one common place. So we were kind of looking for another solution. Dr. Manuel in Jacksonville connected with Enflux, and they came and did a demo. And after seeing their product one time, I was like, we have to have this product. And the reason that we needed it is, from an IT perspective, I like the fact that everything was combined into what they use with dashboards, right? So they have dashboards for categories per item. They have dashboards for assessment effectiveness, for curriculum effectiveness, for student performance. And here recently, we've got new dashboards for MPJE and PCOA. So again, these dashboards allow us to make decisions based on the information presented to us. And the number one reason I would say that we bought Enflux was the metric that we're we're judged at the university is NAPLEX first time passing rate, right? And a couple of years ago, we had a dip in our passing rate. So everyone has really been paying attention. We had a curriculum change through that process. But the other thing is we want to be able to make decisions early on in the semester and not wait till finals when students possibly are failing. And then we go, what do we need to do? Do we need to provide remediation right at the end of the semester? So again, it's become an early alert system for remediation. We're doing that on the very first exam. Now we're able to make data-driven decisions and feel comfortable about those decisions. The other thing I like about Enflux too is a customer-driven support model. And what I mean by this, and I'll show you an example here in a moment, I've had several needs along the way that Enflux did not natively have for what I needed. Well, I met with their team and their developers, and guess what? In almost a week or two later, they're like, oh, we have that now for you. So what I like about them is when the customer has an issue, they listen and they respond very quickly, to be matter of fact. Also, we use this for documentation and reports for ACPE, because when it comes time to do a self-study, we're having information pulled all over the place, and now we go to Enflux and pull most of our information directly from Enflux. So problem number one, November of last year, we had our initial training with Enflux. They came in, they trained all of our faculty. And December came, we were working on finals, and then at the end of the year, everyone kind of disperses and they go on vacations and they're gone, right? So we set a deadline for them for February the 1st. And this is a deadline set by the dean stating that all faculty had to have all their questions tagged. Well, the thing that you think about is if we're using ExamSoft, why aren't the questions already tagged? Well, when we got in here and looked in Enflux, they have a categories per item dashboard. This is a graphic that was generated. We had 73% of our faculty non-compliant and only 27 compliant. So problem number one was to get all of our questions tagged. So as you can see here, January the 30th, I started doing snapshots. So this is the January 30th snapshot. 74% of our faculty tagged with Kate, 82% with ACPE, 77% with Blooms, and then only 3% with NAPLEX. And that actually, we saw that and we're like, why aren't they tagging NAPLEX? Coming to find out, pharmaceutical scientists were saying, well, NAPLEX tags don't really apply to us. Well, that's not necessarily true. So one of our faculty members is a NAPLEX test writer. So he actually met with them and said, okay, based on what area that you teach, these are the tags that you should use. So we created videos, sent that out to faculty. I'd be happy to share those videos with any of you. But we use that to show them how to tag properly. So what I would say is, as of January 30th, most professors were tagging, but not all of them. And again, our requirement is that you have to have a minimum of 4 tags per question. One from Kate, one from ACPE, one from Blooms, and one from NAPLEX. So February 10th hit, here's another snapshot. Well, you see the numbers changing a little bit, but why are we going from 74% in Kate to 62? Again, Enflux lays this out for you, but once you dig a little deeper running the dashboard, you determine that newer questions were happening in the spring semester, and they were still not tagging them appropriately. So now we're asking them to go back to 2015 and tag everything, and at the same time, keep up with your current tags. So again, the dean actually put a mandate and said, if you do not tag by February the 28th, there'll be corrective action. And typically you don't have to do that with faculty, but we had to do that. And here's why. Enflux for us would be no good without good data. Okay, so good data presents good results or good decisions from that good data. So we have to have the categories tagged appropriately before we really get into the meat of Enflux. So as of February the 28th, I can say we're at 100% across the board. That was a major feat, and I'll tell you what made that successful. Every Monday, I sent an update to faculty. And I would even do screenshots to individual faculty. I used Enflux to create action plans for each faculty member and assign them a due date. And then lastly, each week I would create an additional training video of how to do what I call bulk tagging. That's where they go into ExamSoft and they select all the questions and tag that way. And we found that that was the most optimal way to get it done. And we got everything completed. Then, of course, fast forward to March, now we're into COVID-19 and everyone's dispersed, but we're still using Enflux. So before we go any further, I want to go to the categories per item dashboard demo, and then I want to talk about a new filter that was applied, because this is really the first place that you're going to start. All right, so I'm in Enflux now. Everyone see my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you see my screen. Good. All right, so let's go to the categories per item dashboard. All right, so here is where it stands as of spring 2020. As you can see, I still have, I'm 0, 0, but I'm now 2% and 2% here. So Blooms and Naplex, we've kind of creeped off the 100%. Why? Well, we have a professor that's not tagging and I have to work with them one-on-one. So let me show you the power of this dashboard and how I use it. So again, I've asked Enflux to show me spring 2020 first and foremost, because that's the current semester. So what we do here is I will uncheck, well, before I do, each individual professor can either filter by item ID, they can filter by category, they can filter by creator, so they can uncheck everyone and only check them. Last editor, same thing, and then tag status. And I find that tag status is the most powerful for me. So what I like to do is I like to say, okay, show me not tagged. Of course, green is good, orange is bad, right? So here is professors that are in the current semester that haven't tagged items. Okay, so I'll use Dr. Gasvini as an example. So in this question here, 33908, she's tagged Kate because it's not orange. She's tagged ACPE, but not Blooms and Naplex. So what she would do is she would click this, and if you'll scroll down a little bit, it will take you directly to the question. Okay, so she can read the question, and then here they can click and open it directly into ExamSoft. So of course, this is where she doesn't even have to search and look for it. She's directly at that question, and I can see that she has tags, but guess what? I don't see Blooms. Right? If I come back over here, we said in this question, it's missing Blooms. So what she would do is she would click add a category. Let me collapse these. And she would open Blooms. This question is a knowledge question. So she's going to click that, say done, and then it updates. Now, the one question that a lot of faculty members ask is, well, why doesn't it immediately show up in Enflux? Well, there's a good reason for that. Enflux pulls data once a week, right? Typically on Saturday. So every Monday when I would come to work, I would re-update that. Now, that works great for November up until February. Then we got to closer to the deadline, and I met with Anna and her team, and I said, listen, is there a way that we can pull the data more frequently? So we started doing twice a week, and then the last 2 weeks, we did 3 times a week, because we were trying to hit that deadline. But in a normal given situation, once a week works perfectly fine for us. But again, trying to make that deadline, we actually pulled 3 times a week, and they were more than accommodating for that. So again, she would go through and tag these questions. And so this is how I manage that process. And at our faculty meeting, we would give awards and accolades for those that actually completed the tagging by the deadline. The other problem that I had is I have faculty that took had exams in, let's say, 2015, 2016, and 17. Well, they're no longer employed, whether they're working for a different university, they were an adjunct, they might have even retired. And they were showing in my data, right? So if I go to the all status, they were showing here and it was complicating things for me because I would have to uncheck them each time to not have to see them anymore. So I met with Anna and her team and Kristen, and they came back, and a week later they go, okay, we solved your problem. So now down here, and this did not originally exist, they have an option to uncheck unwanted items. So if I open that here, I'll say last editor, and I can uncheck people from the list. Well, Dr. Campbell, she retired a couple years ago, right? And I can go through here and just look through, and once you set this, it stays like that until you turn it off. Dr. Joseph was an adjunct, he's no longer here. Dr. Evans was an adjunct. So again, as you can see, you can uncheck them and apply, and it pulls them out of the data so you no longer see them. Again, this was a feature that did not exist, and now it does. So that was another plus for me as well. So another thing is, once we got through the categories per item, the next step was getting the faculty implementing other dashboards in ExamSoft. So the next dashboard that we use is the student performance dashboard. And I'm not going to directly pull it up right now because, of course, it has student data in it. But here's an example of a student performance action plan. And so what happens is a student takes exam 1. And our metric is 70%. So if they do not score 70% on the exam, then we go through and we actually meet with a student. This is a particular professor. Again, I changed the name of the student to keep all their names out of it. So John Doe earned a score of 66.5 on individualized health patient care exam 1. And the data-driven decision is due to poor performance in the class. The learner is in the at-risk population. The data-driven objective, John is not a she, he's a he, but they must receive a score of 70% or better in the class, and then the measurable goal is 70% on exam 2, okay? And then up at the top, of course, we have the course. We also assign this to the committee, the student service advisors, because they're also meeting with the students. And then, of course, we tag our ACPE standard. So this particular item is for 24.3, student achievement and readiness. We set a due date of March the 13th, and then we assign this to the student services coordinator. And that coordinator then sets up a meeting with a student, and they talk to them about, what issues was on individualized health patient care 1 that caused you to score this. Was it lack of study? Were there some personal issues going on? Do you need to be tutored? So what ended up happening is that this particular student felt like they needed tutoring. So we have a care tutoring program. We assigned them with a tutor, and they were tutored in this specific subject. And on exam 2, I'm happy to say that the student scored an 84 on that particular exam. So as you can see, this action plan, follow it all the way through, it actually produced a good result. The other thing that I like about the action plans too is that there's commenting on it. So Dr. Honeywell, he's the one that did this particular this action plan. So he made it originally. Miss Leonard, when she met with the student, she commented on what the conversation was with the student and what ended up happening. After the tutoring was done, that was commented as well. And then on it, but right before exam 2, we went back to this dashboard when we closed it, and we actually shared that result. The other cool thing about this too is we can produce a report of these dashboards and show ACPE. Again, because they're going to ask, what are you doing to make your NAPLEX scores go up? What are you doing for remediation? So again, we use this for that as well. What are our next steps? Well, my next steps was to, in March, start with assessment effectiveness. I actually already had a session with Anna and her team on assessment effectiveness and curriculum effectiveness. But again, we're all working from home right now. So the plan is, as soon as we get back, our data will still be there. We're going to take and have a separate training with our assessment committee, and they will go through each individual assessment, and they're looking at biserial numbers and looking at questions that might not, as you can see, the questions that are in orange, we need to address those. We need to make sure there's not a problem. Maybe there's a distractor issue, but we're going to go through and look at that. But we're going to do it from a committee level and have the committee then assign the action plan back to the individual professor so that the onus of this is on the committee. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a separate training with our curriculum effectiveness team, and that's our curriculum committee. And then from there, they're going to start checking on how curriculum is approving from semester to semester. One other thing I failed to mention earlier is professors kept asking me, why are we going back to fall 2015? Well, I have a simple answer for that. Longitudinal data, right? So if you have questions that appear on multiple exams over time, you want to see, are they performing better on that question based on the changes in your teaching, the changes in your remediation, or even the review practices that you do for your exams? So again, that's why that's needed. So yes, they kind of balked at that for a minute, but we got them to complete that. And again, these numbers here, fall 2015, 2016, of course, these numbers look much better. Now that we're in fall 2020, our curriculum is producing 87 to 92%, and in large due to influx and the ability to look at this data ahead of time and not wait to the end. So I'd like to kind of stop at this point and let me stop sharing my screen. One thing that Anna brought up earlier, I welcome you guys to come on video. I think that's the power of using Zoom, is to be able to put a face with a name. Obviously, if you're having a bad hair day, which I always have good hair days, you can unmute your mics, but let's use the feature of the raise of the hand. So what you would do is, if you click on participants, and at the bottom of participant, there's a raise hand feature. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like. If I raise my hand, it puts a little blue check mark next to my name. So if you raise your hand, we'll do those in order, and I'll let Anna kind of field those for you. So what questions do you have? Anything you want to know at all? I'm going to have to get you guys some more coffee. I cannot believe there's no questions at all. Katie, I'm going to call on you. You are smiling big. What questions do you have?
I don't have that many questions.
Not that, Katie. I know you're smiling all the time. I'm talking about Katie Ronald. She's the one smiling big.
All right. So how, we're still getting faculty to try to tag, and that's definitely something we're struggling with. So what kind of incentives were you giving faculty? So you said you gave faculty kind of like incentives or kudos at faculty meetings. So what kind of incentives were you getting faculty to get them to start getting their questions tagged?
You know, it's simple enough, and you're going to laugh when I tell you this, but one thing that I think faculty at our institution really like is they like recognition among their peers. So we actually, at our faculty meetings, which we have them once a month, and we have our executive council meetings typically once a week. So we ended up bringing the faculty in, and we have digital monitors all over College of Pharmacy. I think we have about 9 of them. And so we actually have their picture on the screen and a big kudos for getting their categories tagged. And what was so funny is one of our executive council members was the one suggesting that. And after week 1, once I put someone's face on the screen, people were asking me literally this question: how do I get on the screen? And I was like, oh, let's set up a Zoom session and let me show you how to knock it out. And then, and really they didn't want to be, no one wants to be called out for not doing something appropriately, but everyone does like to be acknowledged when they do something right. So we were using our digital signage, and we even created a certificate at our faculty member and handed that out to them. So again, that recognition, which again doesn't cost anything, but it makes people feel good. Gina has a question. You can unmute your mic, Gina.
I was wondering if y'all have started using the ACP survey dashboards or PCOA yet.
Actually, we have not, just because they were recently loaded a few weeks back. And for us, and again, this is my thought process, I think you could tackle Enflux a couple different ways. Of course, you can use any dashboard at any time, but from my perspective, there's kind of a linear fashion in this, right? So for us, it was categories per item. Then it was looking at the student performance data. Then for us, next is assessment. And then after that's curriculum. And then we have a committee that's going to be looking at PCOA, MPJE, all those dashboards separately, right? So we're starting to assign those with a committee. The one thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to have information overload, right? So I don't want to throw a bunch of things on a bunch of different people at the same time. So again, and I'm trying to do this weekly, is once we get back, assessment will be knocked out that week, curriculum will be knocked out the next week, then we'll work on those other two dashboards that you mentioned the week thereafter, so that hopefully in May, you know, I'm going to give you my hopefully, that by the end of May, we're using Enflux at 100%, and we'll have every dashboard activated and everyone will know. The other thing that I think makes Enflux successful is having one person be your Enflux champion and they be responsible for Enflux. You know, the dean, of course, made me that person, so my job description was changed. It's written in there, so the success of Enflux is really on my back, right? And I'm okay with that, but I told the dean, I said, I can make that happen, but I have to have faculty buy-in. So again, now that we have this and we're showing them how that's going to work, because I'll tell you, I had a couple of naysayers in the audience, not naysayers about Enflux, but more naysayers about assessment in general, because they would say, assessment, 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 but I'm not seeing any assessment. I'm not seeing anything really change from you saying the word assessment. And now we're already showing them that using Enflux, right? So I think that the proof is in the pudding. And when you have faculty members see the success, you don't have to worry about buy-in, but you have to show that to them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, we took a different approach and started with those dashboards mainly because the assessment committee is the group that would review those, and we didn't need full faculty involvement to really look at those dashboards, and we could go ahead and implement with that while we're working on getting the coding updated and corrected for all the questions. So we don't really like your ideas of incentivizing the faculty, because that's where we're struggling right now.
Yeah, I would assume that what we deal with at FAMU is probably not specific to FAMU. I think, you know, I teach at 2 other different institutions, and I think faculty in general, that's kind of nature of the beast, right? We're all busy. We all have a lot to do. We have a lot on our plate. So we're bringing in another tool, okay? And how's that going to make our life better? Well, the one thing I tell people, and me being, I wouldn't say I'm your typical IT guy, because I try to think from a business perspective, and I believe that technology should drive business. And if it's not doing that, then you don't need it. But Enflux is one of those technologies that's typically driving business for us. And at the same time, like I said, once people see how it works and how it's helping them and how it's keeping people accountable, and sometimes, and you'll kind of laugh at this, I say dealing with faculty sometimes is like herding cattle, right? I feel like I need a cattle prod and zap them every once in a while, but that's what my action plans are for, right? My action plans are creating accountability, it's setting a due date, and you natively, you're going to have some faculty members not be accountable. It's normal, right? And when that happens, I just, I tag their division director or the associate dean, and they have a conversation with them. And then guess what? It just starts happening. So I think by doing this, we're corralling everyone together. We're making everyone beat to the same drum for the common goal of producing better NAPLEX results. What other questions do you have, or for you guys that don't currently use Enflux, you know, what questions, concerns may I answer for you regarding the product from a customer perspective?
How long did it take to get the system set up and integrated with ExamSoft before you could start using it?
That's the beauty, Jason. And hey, Jason has the best name of anybody else in this group. I just wanted to point that out. But so the beauty of it was I had initial meetings with Katie, who's our sales rep on the call, or sorry, our sales director. I got to get our titles right. Katie's going to hit me after the call. But you have to have your initial meeting with them and your customer success manager, which would be Anna and Kristen. They're going to meet with you. They're going to ask you a host of questions just to try to understand kind of your environment. From there, they're going to create a user account that they use on ExamSoft so that they can pull the data. And then literally, here's what I was amazed about. Once I gave them that information, a week later, they go, log in here and look at your dashboards. I'm like, are you serious? But it's because their development team has already written all the code, right? So everything is mapped to ExamSoft. Once the data pulls in, the dashboards automatically get populated. And then from there, I did an admin training with them with several other people we have like a little team for Enflux. And then from that point on, we set up 3 individual trainings with our faculty just so that they could make it depending on if they were teaching. That was in November. And then we were live after that. So I would say pretty quickly, if I had to put a time frame, I would say from start of signing the contract to having people trained and ready to go, less than a month. Other questions?
If I could follow up just real quick on that. It also depends on how quickly you guys provide us the access. Some of the delays that we've seen is just because, and of course, especially right now with all of the disruption that we've had with COVID, it's been more difficult to get folks to focus on this, which is fine. I mean, it's absolutely fine. Obviously, it's a trying time. But depending on how quickly you can give us that information is how quickly we can start to put all of that in motion. The ExamSoft will give you access, once we get access to your ExamSoft credentials, that'll give us the ability to create the dashboards, most of the dashboards that Mr. Mobley just went over right now, which we call our EDU dashboards, okay? But then there's AACP, NAPLIX, MPJE, all of those other ones. Also, those depend on how quickly you can get us that data because we do need to get those files together. But the quickest thing we can do is get you with set up with your EDU dashboards, which is all of your ExamSoft stuff. So as soon as you give that to us, we'll start working on it. And as Mr. Mobley said, it could take about a week or so for us to get you going.
The other thing too, Jason, that I want to mention is on our MPJE and our PCOA dashboards, we did have a delay on that, not because of Enflux, because internally we had one dean that had the rights to it and they didn't understand how to pull it. So we had to contact them and assign that we actually assigned it to our assessment director, and then he pulled it and sent that to Anna and her team. So making sure that you have all the people in place and know who does what, that helped a lot.
Cool, thanks.
Leah asked a question, and I want to ask Leah maybe to give me a little more explanation, but she says, in order for your tags to be meaningful for Enflux, what level do you drill down to, or how do you have them set up? Can you explain that just a little bit further so I answer your question appropriately, Leah?
Sure. We actually started tagging in 2015, and initially whenever we set everything up, we chose similar things like CAPE, NAPLEX, things like that, but the level that we went down to, now thinking about it, wasn't far enough. But whenever I've been talking with certain people, the way that the data comes through, it'll go down to a certain level. So like, for example, NAPLEX, do you have like 1.2 point whatever in your tagging system, or what's the best way to set that up ahead of time so that will work with the data cleanly, I guess? All
right, well, I'm glad you asked that because we had a kind of a similar situation, right? So initially we had professors and what I would say is on ExamSoft, you had people try to tag the topmost level, right? And that, to me, is really a category holder for the subcategories. So what I try to do is teach them how to use the subcategories better. Now, again, my rules to them is that you have to have a minimum of 1 tag, but it is encouraged that you have more than 1 tag per question if the question warrants it, right? So if a question you're doing a toxicology question and you have different levels of subcategories like 1.2.4 and 1.2.6, and they both apply, then they do that, right? The other thing that we do too, and this is a little give and take with faculty, but we started tagging individual questions as they wrote the questions. But we have a lot of faculty that because they came from a paper environment to a ExamSoft environment, they use the RTF import, right? So they'll have all their questions in Word, they'll copy into the RTF template, they will, put all the formatting, and then we'll import that. Well, they don't really want to go through each question and add a category one by one because they're like, it takes me hours to do one exam. So what we ended up doing is, again, we use the bulk tagging. So they put all their questions in, and then what they do is they select all the questions, they use bulk edit options, they add the tags, and then they add the subcategories that are specific to every question. And then from there, if they want to drill down on certain questions because they're adding a piece of content that would be different, then they're adding those specific subcategories to 5 to 7 questions, and they're not doing all 50 that way. So again, we're still using subcategories, but we're adding even further granular categories for the questions that warrant that, but we're not individually tagging, and I found that saved a lot of time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's what we've been encouraging them to do as well. I just wasn't sure as far as the data, if it only went down to a certain level or...
Well, the one thing that I found with the data is it does roll up to the high level category for the dashboard purposes, but you still want to tag to the subcategory level so that the data is more meaningful to you on the reporting aspect. Other questions?
I have a quick question. Have you used Enflux at all to predict exam success?
We haven't specifically implemented that, but I have seen ways to do that using the dashboards. So again, I'm always running dashboards and running kind of scenarios in my mind, but you can do that. The big thing with that is using the assessment effectiveness dashboard, right? Because the questions on a particular exam, like we have a lot of professors that they'll have exam 1, 2, 3, and final. And there's going to be cumulative questions that come off of 1, 2, and 3 that end up on their final. So they're very big where they don't want to push the questions to the portals because they're scared that students will take screenshots of the questions. We also have professors that do it opposite. We have professors that it's always new questions every single semester to encourage no cheating, and then they're writing actual application questions where, it's not the memorization game. But to answer your question, if you take your assessment effectiveness dashboard and you go through those questions that have the real low by-point serials and fix those, then you're naturally going to predict a better exam after that because you're going to have less bad questions that kind of either distract students in the wrong way or the questions might be written poorly and they need to be modified.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? I just have a question in the ways you're using your student performance dashboard, other than producing the action plans. Are you utilizing it in any way as far as advising students or any other ways for your student performance dashboard?
Yeah, so what we do is we typically use student performance dashboards in the office hours, right? So the student takes an exam. I'll use individualized health as an example, which used to be our MTM. So that course is probably one of the hardest because it's a team talk course and you probably have 8 different professors on that and you have all those different types of questions being asked. So naturally, we've seen that exam not have good results. So student will come to the professor, they'll say, I made a 46 on that exam, and they're a student that typically 80s, 90s on exams. So what they'll do is they'll go and they'll meet with a student, they'll pull them up on the student performance dashboard, and the student performance dashboard has the ability to predict your scores in the future. So you could say, how many more exams do you have in the semester? Okay, you have 2 more, right? So you can actually say 2 more exams left, and the minimum score I want them to have is a 70% at the end. So you can then do that, and it will say what the student needs to score in the future to basically pass the course, right? So we use that to almost predict how to perform on future exams, and that kind of produces, what do we need to do with you now? Do we need to remediate you now? Do we need to give you tutoring now? Do we need to have separate study sessions? And the student gets a point where they can get their feedback, because everyone teaches in a different way. And students lately have come to the table, instead of saying, I have a problem, they'll say, I have a problem, but here's my suggestion for a solution. And that suggestion might be, could you do a separate study session for this content? And because we actually, we added Zoom in January, now instead of them coming into the classroom, we have professors meeting with students after hours now. Our CARE program, we added Zoom to that. So instead of them coming back to campus, they actually join a Zoom call, and the professor's at their house, and they're doing that, and they're recording that as well. So those are a couple different ways that we use the student performance dashboard to help the student and the professor.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Mobley. I cannot begin to thank you so much for being our guest speaker today. Before I log out though, I wanted to see if I could jump in real quick and show you all a little feature that we've added, which is we've added the ability to add attachments to your action plans. Excuse me. So let me just share my screen very quickly here. Okay, can everyone see that? Thumbs up. Yes, okay. So this is our demo site, and I'm going to just quickly click on our create action plan option here, which will normally, it takes a screenshot of your screen as part of the action plan. And this is where you start to fill out all of the information for dashboard insight, data-driven decision, et cetera, et cetera. But you'll notice that at the very bottom, we also have the ability now to drag and drop documents. So if you have a file, a PDF, perhaps you have a remediation plan that you already have in use or something, this is a good place for you to be able to drop that. Click on the browse, find your file, open it, it attaches it. Okay, I have to fill this out up here. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm going to pick a course. Oops, sorry. And a committee and a standard. And I'm sorry, because I'm just picking random stuff. And I'm going to pick Dr. Bob here to be the assignee of this action plan. And if I had any additional collaborators, I could add those as well. And
you have it, just the actionable, you'll put a date on there.
Yeah,
or
we
unselect.
need to put a date here if it's an actionable. If it's not actionable, you can uncheck it, which I will do. And then just click save. So that will save your entire action plan along with any document that comes along with it. And what's really neat as well is that, let me have this feed in real quick. So here is my last action plan. So let's pretend that I'm Dr. Bob now coming in and I'm reading it. Well, now I have the ability to make comments at this point. So I can add a comment here, but I also have the ability as a commenter to browse and find some files to add here. So for example, maybe we filled out the remediation plan and now it's completed or whatever the case may be. So now you can browse, you can attach files, you can attach multiple files. Let me just pick something very quickly. Just pick it and hit add here. And so it will start to upload your attachment. at
We're
that point.
almost out of time, Anna.
Okay.
I just want
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
to. Yeah.
So anyway, so it does keep track of like how many comments and attachments you have. You can always go back and forth on that. But anyhow, I just wanted to do a quick show and tell of that. And, you know, just let you guys know that we are here for you. Kristen and I are here to help you in any way that we can. And just happy to be of service to you. Again, thank you so very much to Mr. Mobley from FAMU. And, you know, this session has been recorded. I'm going to send you all a copy. We'll probably send you a little link for a survey after the fact as well. So again, everyone, thank you so much. And we hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.